All right. Well, one of the great things about being a pundit of sorts is that you get to talk about rumors and innuendo, and then sometimes rumors and innuendo turn into facts of sorts. And so, if you remember, earlier this week, my friends Brian Weedeye and TJ Lowerman and I were chatting about the rumors around a potential football game called Joe Montana Football 16 or something like it, and we had a discussion about it. And since then, a couple of interesting things have happened. The most interesting being Joe Montana himself tweeted an image of a football game of some sort, and that image included him throwing a football. Brian Weedeye, why was the image tweeted? What does it really tell us, and what does this mean?
So we're coming off a big discussion of the rumors and the hopes and dreams of sports gamers everywhere for a new football game. And we have these rumors that really had begun to grow out of control. And for the sake of the potential success of that game, the developers and Montana, obviously, they couldn't let that linger for much longer. They couldn't let it go on for months with people making assumptions about the game that it would be, in particular, that it would be NFL licensed. If it's not NFL licensed, which this image seems to suggest, they couldn't let people continue to believe that and build up expectations only to be further crushed when the confirmation that it was unlicensed came down the line. So it seems obvious to me that this image was released specifically to quash those rumors because it features a generic team, actually two generic teams, obviously, on the field, a generic stadium, and what appears to be either generic players or maybe legends. It's hard to tell, but it's certainly not current players. So that kind of puts to bed the NFL thing because they're not going to lead with something that's going to disappoint people as their first piece of media. They haven't even really officially announced the game yet. That might come at E3 or it might come beforehand. So we're looking at what's, in all likelihood, an unlicensed game. There's really no reason to think otherwise now. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, and I've written about why, creative freedoms, and they can release it whenever they want at a more appropriate time of the year instead of having to go head-to-head with all the other sports games. There's a lot of things they can do to be successful with a game like that. And there are certainly lessons to be learned from why games like Backbreaker and All Pro Football 2K8 didn't work, and based on statements they've made, it seems like they've definitely learned from those. So we have the image now, puts to bed, I think in most people's minds at least, reasonably puts to bed that it's not going to be an NFL licensed game. And we can move on and look at what they're going to do innovative to try to stand out, because that's what an unlicensed game has to do.
TJ, you saw the image. What do you think about it?
It looks like your standard in-engine game screenshot. I actually ended up going into Madden to see if I could replicate the image, and I put them out side by side on my Twitter account at @ThatSportsGamer. Go give me the follow. Yeah, and Madden looks better. That's what everybody said on Twitter. Usually when we get these pre-release shots, they're super made up, looking nice. Colin Kaepernick looks like he's there, and we all know the Madden 2006 video, how that was a little overblown for what we actually got. This really doesn't seem like that. This looks like it could actually be an in-game shot, but that doesn't really look too impressive from what we saw. Obviously, the most important thing is going to be the actual gameplay of the game when it comes out. But right now, I'm not too impressed by what we've seen.
Well, one thing we should also note is, you say you're not too impressed by it. We don't know what platform still. Right. I mean, we've maybe had the NFL thing answered now. We still don't know if it's even coming to consoles. I mean, that could be a mobile game. There are definitely mobile screenshots that have been put out that have been comparable to that. You don't play from that perspective. You're not going to see it from that perspective. So just like the first screenshots you see for Madden are not really representative of how the game looks. So there's so many questions to be answered, and I think this was just the first piece of it to, hey, let's put that whole NFL thing aside. That's not real. Let's put that aside so we can actually focus on what the game's going to be instead of what it's not in a month or two or whenever that time comes.
One of the things that I love is the breakdown that you immediately get from people who look at the image and like I'm the guy. Oh, I see the image. Okay, yeah, there's Joe Montana. There's a big stadium. There's a guy chasing him. But then I read in the commentary after it, and it becomes apparent how people really are passionate about getting another football game. And they break down what they see, like, okay, well, you can tell both uniforms are actually the same, just with different colors, and they're kind of, not particularly great-looking uniforms, perhaps, or the sidelines appear sort of barren, but that could just be the angle, and Joe Montana, actually, his skin tone is different than the real Joe Montana. He's like got really ripped muscles and stuff. And TJ, I think you even called for the firing of the poor graphics designer who
man,
had a
nameplate
name on the back. Yeah,
Mom Taka. It's great.
So, but I mean, at the end of the day, what this really means to me is I'm happy. I'm looking forward to another sports game to play, sports game to talk about, sports game to perhaps drive more innovation. It doesn't need to be fantastic. If it is, wonderful. But even if it's just a game that comes out, people are going to be talking about it. They're going to be excited about it. They're going to hear what we have to think about it. They're going to tell us what they think about it. I really hope that it is on next generation consoles because while many people still play their PS3 and 360, I still do, as a matter of fact, but not for sports games. I think the vast majority of us who are really big into sports games have well now gotten into the next generation. So my biggest hope for this game is that it is a PlayStation 4, Xbox One game. It really was jarring, TJ, to see your screenshot comparison, and Madden's kind of one of those things, like when you're just playing it, yeah, it looks fine. It doesn't kind of blow your mind, but the screenshots really did look good, and it really did. That was the only time that I sort of looked at the screenshot from Montana. I was like, yeah, that is kind of more washed out, not as clear and stuff. But that doesn't mean anything, right? It really doesn't. We don't want to look too much into this. So, Brian, sort of your last thoughts. When do you expect to hear more? And what do you sort of expect the focus to be on once the game is officially sort of announced, as far as the platforms and dates and things like that?
Well, yeah, we do have E3 coming up in a couple months now, so that's a natural place for news to come. But also, if indeed this is an unlicensed game, boy, news can really get swallowed up at E3. There's so much going on. So I believe that they'll start promoting it in some way, or start rolling out pieces of information, legitimate piece of information, instead of just teasing in the next month or so. Because not only do they have to worry about getting clogged up with everything that happens at E3 as far as media sites go and covering games and stuff, but I think they'd want to get out in front of Madden's promotional period. Again, they're not really going to be directly competing with Madden necessarily, but as far as publicity goes and stuff, it's going to be hard to compete with an NFL licensed game for attention and for publicity and for coverage. So yeah, I think we'll see something start to come out in the next few weeks, maybe. But again, they don't have to do anything big right away. Really, a lot depends on their release date. If it is June or July, then yeah, they have to start real soon. But just to get people talking and interested in the game, rumors are not really the best way to build that interest. So I think legitimate information has to be coming fairly soon. It'll just probably won't all just happen on one day, though.
TJ, knowing nothing at all, when do you think we're going to see Joe Montana football, whatever it is, actually get delivered to us?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I could see probably July would be a good time. With no license or anything, so it's not really tied to coming out with the beginning of the season. It would be really cool if at E3, they made an announcement and they're like, boom, you can go download it now. That would be kind of cool. You'd probably get a little bit extra press if your game is out right there, but of course it would still get wrapped up in all the news and stuff coming out at that time. But it would be could be a way to get some good eyes looking at the game. I'd get you a good run up before Madden comes out too.
Well, speaking of press, the invitation is right here. The makers of Joe Montana Football 16, you want publicity, you want press, you want to get directly to the core of the kind of people who want to play your game. Come on the Press Row podcast, come on the Press Row Hangout. We are right here, ready, willing, and waiting anytime. As long as we can figure out who to ask, we'll definitely ask.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know who's publishing, developing. It's all a mystery.
All a mystery. But all right, that's it. That's what we know. Looking forward to a really interesting ride this spring and summer with Joe Montana Football 16. All right, thank you, TJ. Thank you, Brian. We'll talk to you again next time.